Westbrook's cobblestone Main Street connected the bustling farmers' market to the train tracks that cut through the heart of the small Pennsylvania town. A constant stream of people moved through this artery of commerce, each focused on their own world, grocery bags in hand, mental calculations of bills to pay, schedules to keep. The summer sun beat down mercilessly on this particular Tuesday, just before noon, when a peculiar figure appeared among the fruit vendors and cart pushers. His weathered clothes hung loosely on his frame, his feet bare against the hot stone, his beard unkempt and wild. To anyone passing by, he looked like a drifter, hungry and possibly homeless. But beneath this carefully crafted appearance lay a truth no one in Westbrook could possibly imagine. This disheveled man was actually Richard Thornhill, respected CEO of Thornhill Agricultural Enterprises, owner of a chain of rural warehouses and vast properties across 3 counties. In a decision he'd shared with no one, not even his executive assistant or his ex-wife, Richard had embarked on a silent experiment. For 1 week, he would disguise himself as a homeless man. His mission wasn't complicated, but was profound in its simplicity. He wanted to witness firsthand who, amid the hustle of everyday life, was still capable of genuine kindness, expecting nothing in return, with no knowledge of whom they were helping. It had begun as a fleeting thought during a board meeting when his CFO had coldly suggested cutting their annual community donations, saying most of these people would never help others without expecting something in return. The statement had lodged in Richard's mind like a splinter. He'd built his fortune from nothing, starting with a single grain silo inherited from his grandfather. Now at 53, he found himself increasingly disconnected from the community that had once supported his rise. As he shuffled down Jefferson Avenue on the second morning of his test, Richard's body ached from sleeping on a park bench. The physical discomfort surprised him. At home, he had a personal trainer 3 times a week and slept on a custom mattress that cost more than what many families in Westbrook earned in a month. He moved slowly toward an abandoned newsstand near the bus terminal, his experiment already causing him to question his own judgment. The growl in his stomach was real. He'd limited himself to only what he could obtain as a homeless man would. So far, that had amounted to half a sandwich from a church outreach program and water from public fountains. Richard lowered himself onto the cracked concrete by the newsstand, wiping sweat from his brow with a grimy forearm. 24 hours into his experiment, and not a single person had made eye contact with him for more than a fleeting second. His invisibility was both enlightening and crushing. The sound of light footsteps pulled him from his thoughts. A young girl, no more than 8 years old, stood before him. She carried a small cloth bundle containing what appeared to be 2 bread rolls and a small plastic water bottle. Her flip-flops were worn thin, and her sundress had visible patches on both shoulders. She tilted her head slightly as she studied him, saying nothing at first. Then, with deliberate movements, she unfolded the cloth, removed one of the rolls, and extended it toward him. Richard didn't react immediately, frozen by the unexpected gesture. The girl finally broke the silence with words that pierced straight through his carefully constructed experiment. "My mama says we never eat everything ourselves if there's somebody hungry nearby." With trembling hands, Richard accepted the bread roll. The girl sat down beside him, placed the water bottle between them, broke her own roll in half and began eating slowly. She asked no questions about his name or where he came from. She simply existed alongside him in that moment of shared humanity. Minutes passed in this strange communion before a woman's voice called out, "Lily! Lily Jackson, where are you?" A woman in her early 30s appeared, her face etched with concern as she scanned the street. When she spotted her daughter sitting beside a homeless man, she quickened her pace, anxiety flashing across her features. But something in the peaceful tableau before her caused her to hesitate. Seeing no immediate danger, she approached more cautiously. The girl, Lily, looked up with a smile that illuminated her entire face. "He was hungrier than me, Mama," she explained simply. Richard, who had maintained his silent character until then, raised his eyes to meet the mother's. He couldn't hold back the tears that welled up and spilled over. Sitting on cold concrete, facing a child who had shared the little she had, something broke inside him. He wept silently, tears streaming down his dirt-smudged face as he took another bite of the bread. The mother, Sarah Jackson, shifted uncomfortably, instinctively reaching to pull her daughter away. But Richard spoke then, his voice low and hoarse. "I'm not what I appear to be." And you and your daughter are wealthier than many people I know. Sarah's brow furrowed with confusion, but she kept her hand on Lily's shoulder, unsure how to respond to this strange declaration. Richard didn't elaborate further, knowing that his experiment required him to maintain his disguise for now. But he memorized their faces, noting the name he'd heard, Lily Jackson, and the worn but dignified way Sarah carried herself. Later that evening, back in his hidden hotel room where he stored his real clothes and identity, Richard couldn't shake the image of Lily and her simple act of sharing. He'd witnessed hundreds of people walk past him, averting their eyes or clutching their belongings tighter. Some had even crossed the street to avoid him, but this child with so little to give had given freely. The next morning, Richard abandoned his experiment. He showered, shaved his stubble, and donned one of his tailored suits. With his leather portfolio in hand, he returned to the same street near the bus terminal. It took nearly 2 hours of waiting before he spotted them, Sarah hurrying Lily along, presumably to catch a bus to somewhere. "Excuse me," he called out, approaching with measured steps. "Mrs. Jackson and Lily." Sarah stopped, instinctively pulling Lily closer, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Do I know you?" "Not exactly," Richard replied, "but we met yesterday." He watched as confusion gave way to shock on Sarah's face as she began to recognize his features beneath the now clean exterior. "You're the man your daughter shared her bread with," he confirmed. "My name is Richard Thornhill." Sarah's eyes widened in recognition of the name. Thornhill was on half the agricultural facilities in the county. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What were you doing like that?" Richard gestured to a nearby cafe. "May I buy you both breakfast?" "I owe you an explanation." Over pancakes and orange juice, with Lily happily occupied by the unexpected treat, Richard explained his experiment to a bewildered Sarah. He learned that she worked 2 jobs, mornings at a diner and evenings cleaning offices, while raising Lily alone after her husband had abandoned them 3 years earlier. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment above a hardware store, and most days making ends meet was a constant struggle. "Your daughter's kindness," Richard said, watching Lily carefully cut her pancakes into perfect triangles, "was the only genuine human connection I experienced in 2 days of being invisible." Sarah brushed away unexpected tears. "I didn't teach her that to impress anybody. It's just how we should be," Richard finished for her. "I know." Before they parted ways that morning, Richard made Sarah a promise. Not as charity, he insisted, but as recognition of something valuable he'd found, a lesson in humanity he needed to remember. Lily would receive a full scholarship to Westbrook Academy, the private school on the hill. Sarah would be offered a position managing community relations at his company's headquarters, a job that would utilize her natural empathy and people skills while providing a stable income and benefits. "Why would you do this for us?" Sarah asked, stunned by his offers. "Because," Richard said, watching Lily chase a pigeon outside the cafe window, "I went looking for humanity in my community, and your daughter showed me where to find it." 3 weeks after that fateful encounter, Sarah Jackson stood before the imposing glass doors of Thornhill Agricultural Enterprises headquarters, her reflection distorted in the gleaming surface. The 20-story building dominated Westbrook's modest skyline, its modern architecture, a stark contrast to the town's predominantly historic character. Sarah smoothed her newly purchased blazer, the first she'd owned since college, and took a deep breath. Inside, the lobby hummed with purpose as employees streamed past the security desk. Sarah approached hesitantly, still unable to fully believe the turn her life had taken. "I'm Sarah Jackson," she said to the guard. "I'm starting today in community relations." The guard checked his tablet, nodded, and handed her a temporary badge. 15th floor, Mr. Peterson is expecting you." As the elevator climbed, Sarah's mind raced through the whirlwind of recent events. Richard Thornhill had been true to his word. Within days of their breakfast meeting, Sarah had received official documentation for Lily's scholarship to Westbrook Academy, complete with a stipend for uniforms and supplies. Then came the job offer, a position that paid more than her 2 previous jobs combined, with health insurance and retirement benefits that seemed almost too good to be true. Sarah had given notice at both the diner and the cleaning service, prompting looks of disbelief from her co-workers. "You're working for Thornhill now?" her friend Darlene had asked during her last shift at the diner. Girl, do you know how many people would kill for that opportunity? Sarah didn't know how to explain it without sounding crazy. How do you tell someone that one of the wealthiest men in the county had disguised himself as a homeless person, and your 8-year-old daughter's act of kindness had changed the trajectory of your lives? The elevator doors opened onto the 15th floor, revealing an open-concept office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the town. A man in his early 40s approached with an extended hand. Sarah Jackson, I'm James Peterson, Director of Community Engagement. Welcome to the team. James led Sarah through the office, introducing her to colleagues and explaining the department's mission. We oversee all of Thornhill's community initiatives, educational partnerships, food security programs, environmental conservation. Richard, Mr. Thornhill, has been quite insistent about expanding our work recently. Sarah nodded, trying to absorb everything while maintaining her composure. When will I meet with Mr. Thornhill? She asked, curious about whether he would acknowledge their unusual connection. James smiled. He's not actually here much, travels between the different properties, attends industry conferences, but he specifically requested you for this role, so I'm sure he'll check in soon. By lunchtime, Sarah's head was swimming with new information. She sat alone in the company cafeteria, picking at a salad far fancier than anything she'd ever served at the diner, when her phone buzzed with a text from Lily's school. First day going great. Made a new friend named Emma. The library has so many books. Sarah smiled, her eyes misting slightly. Just 3 weeks ago, they'd been eating discount bread from the day-old bakery, and now... Mind if I join you? Sarah looked up to find a woman about her age standing beside her table, lunch tray in hand. I'm Vanessa Miller, Marketing Department. You're new, right? Sarah nodded, grateful for the friendly face. Sarah Jackson, Community Relations, just started today. Vanessa sat down. Community Relations. You must be the one Richard personally recruited. That never happens. Something in Vanessa's tone made Sarah uncomfortable. We met through unusual circumstances, she said carefully. Vanessa leaned forward. Listen, a word of advice. Richard Thornhill may seem like this generous, community-minded businessman, but there's always an angle with him. Always. Sarah frowned. What do you mean? 3 years ago, he suddenly shut down the processing plant on Oak Street. 200 people lost their jobs with barely 2 weeks' notice. Then he reopened 6 months later with all new automated systems and half the workforce. Vanessa took a bite of her sandwich. Just saying, his generosity usually has a business calculation behind it. Sarah thought about the man who had cried while eating a shared bread roll. Maybe there's more to it than that, she suggested. Vanessa shrugged. Maybe. But in my 5 years here, I've learned that nothing happens at Thornhill Enterprises without a strategic purpose. The conversation left Sarah unsettled for the remainder of the day. By the time she picked up Lily from her after-school program, doubts had begun creeping into her mind. What if this was all some elaborate public relations scheme? What if Richard Thornhill was using them somehow? Lily bounced into the car, her Westbrook Academy uniform still crisp despite a full day of school. Mama, guess what? I got chosen to be class helper this week, and my teacher says I'm really good at math. Sarah's worries momentarily faded at her daughter's excitement. That's wonderful, sweetheart. How about we celebrate with ice cream? As they sat outside the ice cream parlor, Lily's chin dripping with chocolate, Sarah asked casually, Do you ever think about that man you shared your bread with? Lily nodded, licking her spoon. Sometimes. He was the sad man who turned out to be a prince, right? Sarah smiled at her daughter's fairy tale interpretation. Not exactly a prince, but yes, he was pretending to be someone else. Why did he do that? Lily asked, the simple question cutting to the heart of Sarah's concerns. He said he wanted to see if people would be kind without knowing who he really was, Sarah explained. Lily considered this, her small forehead creasing in thought. That makes sense. Grandma always says people show their true selves when nobody's watching. The wisdom from the mouth of her child struck Sarah deeply. That night, after tucking Lily into bed in their still modest apartment, Sarah had decided against moving immediately, wanting to ensure the job worked out first. She sat at their small kitchen table and opened her laptop. She typed Richard Thornhill into the search engine and began reading everything she could find. Articles about business acquisitions and agricultural innovations scrolled past, but she was looking for something more personal. Eventually, She found a feature piece in the regional business journal from 3 years earlier, around the time of the plant closure Vanessa had mentioned. The article detailed how Richard had lost his wife, Eleanor, to cancer after a brief illness. A quote stood out. Eleanor always believed that business had a responsibility to the communities it served. Her passing has reminded me of what truly matters. A follow-up article, dated 6 months later, announced the reopening of the modernized plant along with the establishment of the Eleanor Thornhill Technical Training Center, which provided free education for displaced workers to learn new skills for the automated facility. Every employee from the original plant was offered either a position in the new facility or fully funded training for alternative careers, the article stated. Sarah sat back, processing this new information. The timeline matched what Vanessa had described, but the context painted a very different picture. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work early. As she organized her new desk, a notification popped up on her computer. Meeting with R. Thornhill, 9 a.m., Conference Room C. Her heart raced as she gathered her notebook and made her way to the designated room. She was the first to arrive, but within minutes Richard Thornhill himself walked in, looking every bit the successful CEO in his tailored suit. "Sarah," he greeted her warmly. "How are you settling in?" "Very well, thank you," she replied, studying his face. Without the dirt and desperation, he looked completely different, yet she could still see traces of the vulnerable man who had accepted Lily's bread with trembling hands. "And Lily, how is she enjoying Westbrook Academy?" "She loves it," Sarah said. "Especially the library." Richard smiled, genuine warmth reaching his eyes. "I'm glad to hear it. I have a proposition for you, which is why I asked for this meeting." He opened a leather portfolio. "I've been thinking about expanding our community outreach programs. Specifically, I want to create something focused on food security and dignity, inspired by what Lily showed me." Sarah listened as Richard outlined his vision for a program that would provide meals to those in need, but with an emphasis on dignity and community connection rather than charity. "I'd like you to lead this initiative," he concluded. "How you understand better than most what it means to struggle while maintaining dignity." Sarah hesitated, then decided to be direct. "Why are you really doing this, Mr. Thornhill? Is it a PR move? Tax write-off? What's the angle?" Instead of being offended, Richard seemed to appreciate her frankness. "3 years ago, I lost my wife," he said quietly. "Eleanor was the conscience of this company, always pushing me to consider the human impact of every business decision. After she was gone, I buried myself in work, in expansion, in profit margins. I became exactly the kind of businessman she would have despised." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "That day with Lily, watching a child with so little share so freely, it was like hearing Eleanor's voice again, reminding me of what matters. This isn't about PR or tax advantages. It's about remembering who I wanted to be before I forgot." 6 months into her new position at Thornhill Agricultural Enterprises, Sarah had transformed from an uncertain newcomer to a confident program director. The Breaking Bread Initiative, as she had named it, was rapidly becoming the company's flagship community program. Under her guidance, the initiative had established 5 community kitchens throughout Westbrook County, places where people could not only receive meals, but also learn cooking skills, share recipes, and build connections. On this particular Wednesday morning, Sarah stood in the newest location, a renovated storefront in downtown Westbrook, supervising the installation of industrial-grade kitchen equipment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Board meeting finished early. Coming to see the progress." In the months since their first official meeting, Sarah and Richard had developed a professional relationship built on mutual respect. He had given her remarkable autonomy with the Breaking Bread initiative, approving her budget requests without question, and connecting her with his extensive network of business contacts. For her part, Sarah had thrown herself into the work with passion and determination, drawing on her own experiences to create programs that truly addressed community needs. "Looks impressive," Richard commented as he entered the space, surveying the gleaming stainless steel counters and state-of-the-art appliances. "The cooking classes start next week?" Sarah nodded, checking items off her clipboard. "Monday. We already have 30 people signed up for the first session. Basic nutrition and budget-friendly meal planning." Richard smiled approvingly. "Eleanor would have loved this," he said. a statement he often made when particularly pleased with the initiative's progress. The mention of his late wife no longer surprised Sarah. She had come to understand how deeply Richard's transformation was connected to his grief and his desire to honor Eleanor's memory. "Mr. Thornhill," called one of the contractors, "could you approve this modification to the ventilation system?" As Richard stepped away to consult with the contractor, Sarah's phone rang. The screen showed Westbrook Academy, immediately triggering her maternal concern. "Hello? Mrs. Jackson, this is Principal Harrington from Westbrook Academy. I'm calling about Lily." The principal's tone was serious enough to make Sarah's heart race. "Is she all right?" "She's fine physically, but there's been an incident I'd like to discuss with you in person. Would you be able to come to the school this afternoon?" Sarah glanced at her packed schedule, then at Richard, who was now examining blueprints with the contractor. "I'll be there at 3, she promised, ending the call just as Richard returned. "Everything okay?" he asked, noticing her worried expression. "Lily's school. The principal wants to meet with me." Richard frowned. "Is Lily in trouble?" "I don't know, he didn't say." She hesitated. "I need to leave early today." "Of course," Richard said immediately. "Family comes first. Do you need me to handle anything here?" Sarah shook her head. "The contractor knows what to do. I've already signed off on everything." She gathered her belongings, her mind racing with possibilities. Lily had adjusted well to Westbrook Academy, excelling academically and making friends despite the socio-economic gap between her and most of her classmates. What could have happened? At precisely 3 o'clock, Sarah sat in Principal Harrington's office, hands clasped tightly in her lap. The principal, a stern man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, sat across from her with a folder open on his desk. "Mrs. Jackson, I've called you in because of a concerning pattern of behavior from Lily." Sarah braced herself. "What kind of behavior?" "Lily has been giving away her lunch and school supplies to other students." He adjusted his glasses. "Yesterday she gave her entire lunch to another student and went without eating herself. When her teacher questioned her, Lily said the other student needed it more than she did." Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that it wasn't something worse, pride in her daughter's generosity, and confusion about why this warranted a formal meeting. "I don't understand the problem," she said carefully. "Isn't sharing a good thing?" Principal Harrington folded his hands. "At Westbrook Academy, we encourage self-reliance and personal responsibility. While generosity is admirable, we're concerned that Lily may be, how shall I put this, overcompensating for her scholarship status." The implication hit Sarah like a slap. "So you think she's trying to buy friendship because she's not wealthy?" "Not necessarily," the principal backpedaled, "but children from different backgrounds sometimes develop unusual coping mechanisms. The student she gave her lunch to, for instance, comes from one of the wealthiest families in Westbrook." Sarah stood, anger rising in her chest. "My daughter was sharing her food with someone she thought was hungry before she ever set foot in this school. That's who she is, not some coping mechanism. Mrs. Jackson, please understand." "No, you understand," Sarah interrupted. "My daughter shared her bread with a homeless man who turned out to be Richard Thornhill, which is why she has a scholarship to this school in the first place. Her generosity isn't something that needs to be corrected." Principal Harrington's expression shifted from condescension to surprise. "Richard Thornhill? I wasn't aware." "No, you weren't," Sarah said, gathering her purse. "Is Lily in trouble for sharing?" "Well, no, but then we're done here." Outside the principal's office, Sarah found Lily waiting on a bench, swinging her legs and reading a book. She looked up with worried eyes. "Am I in trouble, Mama?" Sarah knelt beside her daughter. "No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble at all." She brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face. "But we need to talk about something. When you give your lunch away, does that mean you go hungry?" Lily shrugged. "Sometime, but Emma forgot her lunch yesterday, and she said her stomach was getting growly noise." "Honey, it's wonderful that you want to help your friends, but you don't have to give away all your food. You could share half like you did with Mr. Thornhill, remember?" Lily nodded slowly. "I just wanted Emma to like me." There it was, the vulnerability beneath the generosity. Sarah hugged her daughter tightly. "People should like you for who you are, not what you give them. Real friends care about each other, not about getting things." That evening, as Sarah prepared dinner in their apartment, they still hadn't moved. Though she'd begun looking at modest houses in good school districts, her phone rang. It was Richard. "I heard about what happened at Westbrook Academy," he said without preamble. Sarah sighed. "News travels fast. I'm on the board of trustees," Richard explained. "Harrington called me directly after your meeting, practically tripping over himself to apologize for any misunderstanding." Despite her lingering irritation with the principal, Sarah laughed. "I may have mentioned your name." "So I heard." There was a pause. "How's Lily?" Confused. She thought she was doing the right thing. Sarah stirred the pasta sauce simmering on the stove. She was giving her lunch to a girl named Emma who comes from a wealthy family but apparently forgets her lunch often. Richard was quiet for a moment. "Emma Crawford. I think that's her last name, yes. Do you know her?" "I know her father, Bradley Crawford. He's an interesting character. Owns half the real estate development companies in the county." Something in Richard's tone made Sarah curious. "What do you mean by interesting?" "Let's just say his business practices don't always align with my values." Richard cleared his throat. "Look, I have a proposition for you. The company Christmas party is next Friday evening. I'd like you to attend as my special guest to speak about the Breaking Bread initiative. It would be good exposure for the program." Sarah hesitated. "I'm not sure I have anything appropriate to wear to a corporate Christmas party." "It's a work expense," Richard said firmly. "The company will cover it. And please bring Lily. There will be other children there, activities planned for them in a separate area." After they hung up, Sarah stared at her phone, an odd feeling settling in her stomach. Richard had changed the subject rather abruptly from Bradley Crawford to the Christmas party. Was there something he wasn't telling her? The following week, wearing a modest but elegant black dress purchased with the company credit card Richard had insisted she use, Sarah entered the grand ballroom of the Westbrook Hotel. Lily, resplendent in a green velvet dress, clutched her hand tightly as they navigated through the crowd of Thornhill employees and their families. "Sarah, over here," Vanessa from marketing waved from near the bar. "And this must be the famous Lily. I've heard so much about you." Lily smiled shyly as Vanessa bent down to her level. "Are you excited for the kids' party? They have a chocolate fountain and a magician." Lily's eyes widened. "A real magician?" "A real one," Vanessa confirmed, pointing toward a set of double doors. "Through there. The children's coordinator will get you signed in." As Lily was escorted away by an enthusiastic party planner, Vanessa handed Sarah a glass of champagne. "So, the rumor is you're giving the keynote speech tonight." Sarah took a nervous sip. "Hardly a keynote, just a 5-minute presentation about breaking bread." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. 5 minutes in front of the entire board of directors and all the major shareholders? That's a big deal, Sarah." Before Sarah could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A man with silver hair and an expensive suit entered, surrounded by what appeared to be an entourage of assistants and associates. "Bradley Crawford," Vanessa whispered. "Westbrook's very own real estate mogul." Sarah studied the man curiously, remembering Richard's cryptic comments. Crawford moved through the room with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding attention, shaking hands and slapping backs as he made his way toward the bar. "What's he doing at a Thornhill event?" Sarah asked. "They're not exactly friends." Vanessa smirked. "Business makes for strange bedfellows. Crawford's development company is trying to acquire land adjacent to Thornhill's northern processing plant. The rumor is they're negotiating some kind of deal." Across the room, Richard appeared, making his way directly toward Sarah. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, though there was tension visible in the set of his jaw. "Sarah, I'm glad you made it. Is Lily enjoying the children's party?" "She just went in. Something about a magician and a chocolate fountain." Richard smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Listen, there's been a slight change of plans. I'd like you to speak earlier than we originally discussed, in about 15 minutes, if that's all right." Sarah blinked in surprise. "So soon? I thought it was after dinner." "A scheduling adjustment," Richard said vaguely, his eyes darting toward Bradley Crawford, who was now holding court near the center of the room. "Is everything okay?" Sarah asked, following his gaze. Richard hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Crawford is planning something that could impact a lot of people in Westbrook, including many who benefit from your program. I need your speech to remind everyone what Thornhill Enterprises stands for before he makes his announcement." "What announcement?" Richard's expression darkened. If I'm right, he's here to publicly pressure me into selling land that would displace dozens of families from affordable housing units we subsidize. Having you speak about community values first might make that harder for him. 15 minutes later, Sarah stood at the podium, a spotlight illuminating her as the crowded ballroom fell silent. Her prepared speech notes trembled slightly in her hands as she surveyed the sea of expectant faces. In the front row, Richard nodded encouragingly. Near the back, Bradley Crawford watched with thinly veiled impatience, occasionally checking his watch. "Good evening," Sarah began, her voice steadier than she felt. "My name is Sarah Jackson, and I'm the director of the Breaking Bread initiative at Thornhill Agricultural Enterprises." She paused, then set aside her notes. The carefully crafted speech suddenly felt inadequate for what Richard needed from her tonight. Instead, she decided to speak from the heart. "A year ago, my daughter Lily and I were struggling to make ends meet. I was working 2 jobs, and some days we shared a single loaf of day-old bread for our meals." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Most of these people, executives, investors, community leaders, had never known such scarcity. One day, Lily saw a homeless man sitting alone near the bus terminal. Without hesitation, she shared her bread with him, saying something her grandmother had taught her: "We never eat everything ourselves if there's somebody hungry nearby." Sarah's eyes found Richard's, and he gave her an almost imperceptible nod. What Lily didn't know, what I didn't know, was that the homeless man was actually Richard Thornhill. The murmur grew louder. Many in the audience turned to look at Richard in confusion. Sarah continued, "Mr. Thornhill had disguised himself to see who in our community would show kindness without expecting anything in return. My 8-year-old daughter's simple act of sharing changed both our lives and, I believe, changed something in Thornhill Enterprises as well." She gestured to the large screen behind her, which began displaying images of the Breaking Bread community kitchens, of people cooking together, sharing meals, learning skills. The Breaking Bread initiative isn't charity. It's about dignity, community, and the simple truth that we're all better off when we share what we have, whether that's food, knowledge, or opportunity. Sarah looked directly at Bradley Crawford now. "In Westbrook, we have a choice about what kind of community we want to be. One where success is measured only by profit margins and property values, or one where we recognize that true wealth comes from ensuring no one is left behind." As she concluded her speech, the ballroom erupted in applause. Richard was the first to his feet, followed quickly by others. Even some of Crawford's associates were clapping, though the man himself remained seated, his expression unreadable. Richard joined Sarah at the podium, taking her hand and raising it slightly as he addressed the crowd. "Thank you, Sarah, for that powerful reminder of our company's mission. Thornhill Enterprises was built in this community, by this community, and our success will always be measured by how we give back." He turned to face Crawford directly. "Which is why I'm announcing tonight that the North Mills property is being permanently designated as affordable housing, managed by our new Thornhill Community Trust." Bradley Crawford stood abruptly, his face flushing with anger. "We had an agreement, Thornhill." "No, Bradley, we had a discussion," Richard corrected calmly. "And I've made my decision." Crawford stormed toward the exit, his entourage scrambling to follow. As the dinner portion of the evening began, Sarah found herself seated at the head table beside Richard, still processing what had just happened. "That wasn't exactly what I had planned to say," she admitted. Richard smiled. "It was better, authentic. It's exactly what was needed. But I still don't understand what Crawford was planning, or why my speech would make a difference." Richard sighed, cutting into his steak. "Bradley has been trying to acquire the North Mills property for months. It's the last piece he needs for a luxury development project. Currently, those buildings provide affordable housing for about 30 families, many of whom work for Thornhill or use our community services." "And you were considering selling?" Sarah asked, surprised. Richard looked uncomfortable. "The offer was substantial. The board was pressuring me to accept, arguing we could use the money to build more facilities elsewhere, maybe help more people in the long run. The financial logic was sound." "But," Sarah prompted. Richard set down his fork, "but Eleanor would have fought tooth and nail to protect those families. And after hearing you speak tonight, seeing the reaction in the room, it confirmed what I already knew in my heart. Some things shouldn't be for sale." Sarah studied him, seeing once again the vulnerable man who had cried over a shared piece of bread. "Crawford didn't know about your homeless experiment, did he?" Richard shook his head. "No one did until you mentioned it tonight. I never told anyone on the board or in management. So that's why you wanted me to speak before he could make his announcement. You were using my story to publicly commit yourself to a position he couldn't fight." "I was using the truth to remind myself of what matters," Richard corrected gently. "Crawford will survive. He has plenty of other development opportunities." As dessert was being served, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the children's party coordinator. "Lily not feeling well, in the hotel lobby lounge." Sarah excused herself and hurried to find her daughter, discovering Lily curled up on a plush sofa looking pale. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" Lily looked up with tearful eyes. "My tummy hurts." And Emma was being mean. Sarah sat beside her, brushing hair from her forehead. "Mean how?" "She said her daddy told her that my mama only got her job because you and I tricked Mr. Thornhill into feeling sorry for us." Lily's lower lip trembled. "But we didn't trick anyone. I just shared my bread because that's what we do." Sarah's blood boiled at the thought of Bradley Crawford poisoning his daughter's mind with such insinuations, but she kept her voice calm for Lily's sake. "That's right, honey. We never tricked anyone. You did a kind thing because that's who you are." She pulled Lily into a hug. "How about we go home early? I think you've had enough excitement for one night." As they gathered their coats, Richard appeared in the lobby. "Is everything all right?" he asked, concerned. Sarah hesitated, not wanting to burden him with playground drama on such an important night. "Lily's not feeling well. We're heading home." Richard knelt to Lily's level. "I'm sorry you're not feeling well. Was it too much chocolate from the fountain?" Lily shook her head, then blurted out, "Emma said I tricked you." Richard's expression shifted from concern to understanding. "Ah, Emma Crawford?" When Lily nodded, Richard sighed. "Well, Emma is wrong. You never tricked me. In fact, you taught me something very important that day." He looked up at Sarah. "Let me have my driver take you both home." In the backseat of Richard's luxury sedan, Lily fell asleep against Sarah's shoulder, exhausted from the evening's emotions. Sarah gazed out at the passing streetlights, reflecting on how dramatically their lives had changed in just 1 year. The driver turned onto their street, still lined with modest apartment buildings. As he pulled up to their building, Sarah gently woke Lily. "We're home, sweetheart." Back in their apartment, as Sarah tucked a drowsy Lily into bed, her daughter asked sleepily, "Mama, are we rich now?" The question caught Sarah off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "Emma says we are because of Mr. Thornhill, but I don't feel rich." Sarah smoothed the blanket over her daughter. "There are different kinds of richness, Lily. We have enough now, enough food, enough security, enough opportunities. That's one kind of wealth. But the most important kind is knowing how to share what you have, whether it's a little or a lot." She kissed Lily's forehead. "And by that measure, you've always been the richest person I know." After Lily fell asleep, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, still in her elegant dress, thinking about the evening's events. Richard had used her story, their story, to make a decisive business move against Crawford. While she believed his intentions were good, she couldn't help but wonder if she and Lily were being used as convenient symbols in some larger corporate game she didn't fully understand. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richard. "Thank you for tonight. Your speech changed minds in that room. The board is fully behind the North Mills decision now." She typed back, "Did you always plan to use our story that way?" There was a long pause before his reply came. "No, but when Crawford forced my hand, I realized your voice would be more powerful than mine. I hope you don't feel I took advantage of your goodwill." Sarah considered this, then responded, "The right thing happened for those families. That's what matters." She hesitated, then added, "But in the future, I'd appreciate full transparency about how our story is being used." Richard's reply was immediate. "Absolutely. You're right to call me out on that." "Coffee tomorrow to discuss next steps for breaking bread?" Sarah agreed, then set her phone aside. Despite her misgivings about tonight's manipulation, she couldn't deny that Richard's heart seemed to be in the right place. He could have easily taken Crawford's money and found ways to justify it. Instead, he'd chosen a path that honored both Eleanor's memory and the lesson Lily had taught him. The next morning, Sarah met Richard at a small cafe far from the Thornhill headquarters. His choice, as he said he wanted to speak freely, away from corporate ears. He was already waiting when she arrived, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than his usual business attire. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as she sat down. "I wanted to apologize properly for putting you in that position last night without full context." Sarah accepted the coffee he'd ordered for her. "I understand why you did it. I just don't want Lily's gesture to become a corporate marketing tool." Richard nodded. "That's fair. And it won't happen again without your explicit permission." He seemed hesitant, then continued, "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you, something more personal." Sarah felt a flutter of uncertainty. Over the past year, their relationship had remained strictly professional, despite the unusual circumstances that had brought them together. Richard had been her boss, her mentor, but never anything more. "What is it?" she asked cautiously. Richard took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations at Thornhill Enterprises." This was the last thing Sarah had expected. "What? Why?" "I've spent 20 years building this company, expanding it, making it profitable. But the happiest I've felt in years was those few minutes sitting on concrete, sharing bread with your daughter." He smiled sadly. "Eleanor used to tell me I was working so hard to build something that I was forgetting to live." Sarah struggled to understand. "But the company is your legacy. What would you do instead?" "Focus on the community work. Expand Breaking Bread nationally. Create a foundation in Eleanor's name." He looked directly at Sarah. "And I'd like you to run it, not as my employee, but as a true partner in the endeavor." Sarah stared at Richard across the table, momentarily speechless. His proposition wasn't just a job offer. It represented a fundamental shift in both their lives. "A partner," she finally managed. "Richard, I don't have the experience or credentials to run a national foundation." Richard shook his head. "Credentials don't matter here. You have something more valuable. Authentic understanding of the problems we're trying to solve, and the vision to address them with dignity rather than charity." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Think about what you've accomplished with Breaking Bread in just 6 months. Now imagine what you could do with proper resources and full autonomy." Sarah's mind raced with possibilities, but caution tempered her excitement. "This is overwhelming. I need time to think about it, to talk with Lily." "Of course," Richard nodded. "Take all the time you need. The foundation is still in the planning stages." He hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know, something that might help with your decision." From his jacket pocket, he withdrew an envelope and slid it across the table. "What's this?" Sarah asked, not reaching for it. "A year ago, when I first offered to help you and Lily, I set up a trust fund for her education. This is the documentation." He gestured to the envelope. "It's fully funded through college, completely independent of your employment with Thornhill. Whatever you decide about the foundation offer, Lily's future education is secure." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "I didn't want you to feel obligated to me," Richard explained. "The trust is irrevocable. It's Lily's no matter what." Sarah finally took the envelope, holding it carefully as if it might dissolve. "Thank you. This means everything." Richard smiled gently. "It's the least I could do for the child who reminded me of who I wanted to be." 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the empty apartment that had been their home through both struggle and transformation. The walls were bare, their belongings packed into a moving truck headed for their new house. A modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, close enough to Westbrook Academy for Lily to remain enrolled, but far from ostentatious. Sarah had made her decision about Richard's offer, but wanted to share it with him in person rather than over the phone. They had arranged to meet at the first Breaking Bread community kitchen, now a thriving hub serving over 200 meals daily and offering cooking classes, nutrition education, and job training. As Sarah walked through the bustling kitchen, she marveled at how far the program had come. Volunteers chopped vegetables and stirred enormous pots, while community members gathered at long tables, sharing food and conversation. In the corner office, Richard was reviewing architectural plans with a contractor. He looked up when Sarah entered, his face brightening. "Sarah, I wasn't expecting you until this afternoon. The apartment handover went faster than expected," she explained, then nodded toward the plans. "What's this?" Richard rolled up the blueprints. "Plans for the second phase expansion, adding a classroom space and upgraded storage facilities. But that can wait. Did the move go smoothly? Sarah nodded. It's strange leaving that apartment. So many memories, good and bad. Change is always bittersweet, Richard agreed. Even positive changes. Sarah took a deep breath. Speaking of change, I've made my decision about the foundation. Richard set aside the blueprints, giving her his full attention. And? I want to do it, Sarah said firmly, but with conditions. Richard smiled. I'm listening. First, I want to start regional, not national. Let's perfect the model in Pennsylvania before expanding further. Richard nodded approvingly. Sensible. What else? Second, I want a proper board of directors that includes people who have actually experienced food insecurity, not just wealthy donors and corporate representatives. Already in my plans, Richard assured her. The foundation needs diverse perspectives to be effective. Sarah continued. Third, I want Lily to have as normal a childhood as possible. No public speaking, no being the poster child for the foundation or Thornhill Enterprises. Absolutely, Richard agreed without hesitation. She deserves privacy and normalcy. Sarah took another deep breath. And finally, I want complete transparency between us, professionally and personally. No hidden agendas, no surprise revelations at corporate parties. Richard's expression grew serious. You have my word. Full transparency in everything. He extended his hand across the desk. Partners. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Partners. The Eleanor Thornhill Community Foundation officially launched 6 months later, on the anniversary of the day Lily had shared her bread with a disguised Richard. The foundation headquarters occupied a renovated warehouse in downtown Westbrook, its industrial exterior belying the warm, welcoming space inside. On opening day, Sarah stood before a small gathering of staff, board members and community representatives. Richard had insisted that the launch be modest. Let's be judged by our work, not our opening ceremony, he had said. Before we officially open our doors, Sarah began, I want to share the story that inspired this foundation. She recounted the now familiar tale of Lily's generosity and Richard's disguise, but added details few had heard before, how Richard had slept on a park bench, experienced the invisibility of homelessness, felt the genuine desperation of hunger. What began as one man's test of humanity became a test of his own values, Sarah concluded, and what started as one child's simple act of sharing has grown into this foundation, a place where we recognize that true wealth lies in community, in dignity, and in breaking bread together. The small audience applauded as Richard joined Sarah at the podium. No longer the polished CEO in an expensive suit, he wore casual clothes and a more relaxed demeanor. His resignation as CEO of Thornhill Enterprises had shocked the business world, though he remained on the board as chairman emeritus. His daily focus was now entirely on the foundation's work. I have just one thing to add, Richard said, his voice steady but emotional. When I disguised myself as a homeless man, I thought I was testing others. In reality, I was the one being tested, and initially I failed. I had forgotten what truly matters. He glanced at Sarah. It took an 8-year-old girl to remind me that the measure of a person isn't in what they accumulate, but in what they're willing to share when they think no one important is watching. As the ceremony concluded and the doors officially opened, Lily, now 9 years old and oblivious to her role as the foundation's inspiration, darted through the crowd, proudly showing her best friend, Emma Crawford, the children's reading nook she had helped design. The two girls had overcome their initial difficulties and formed a genuine friendship, with Emma becoming a regular visitor at Sarah's new home. Bradley Crawford, surprisingly, had eventually become a supporter of the foundation, though Sarah suspected his involvement was more about rehabilitation of his public image than genuine conviction. Nevertheless, his financial contributions helped fund additional kitchens throughout the county. Richard watched the girls playing together, a contented smile on his face. Full circle, he murmured as Sarah joined him. What do you mean? She asked. Emma's father tried to use his daughter to hurt yours, to drive a wedge between us. Now they're friends and he's supporting our work, however reluctantly. He shook his head in wonder. Life has a way of bringing things full circle if you're patient enough. Sarah nodded, thinking of her own journey, from struggling single mother to director of a foundation, from sharing day-old bread to helping create food security for hundreds of families. Speaking of full circle, she said, I have a new idea for the Breaking Bread program. What if we organized a day where people from all walks of life disguise themselves and experience the city from someone else's perspective? Richard laughed. Learning from my questionable methods? Learning from your results, Sarah corrected with a smile. Sometimes we need to step outside ourselves to see clearly. As the foundation settled into its work over the next year, its impact spread throughout Westbrook County and beyond. Breaking Bread kitchens opened in neighboring counties, then across the state. Richard's business connections and Sarah's practical vision proved to be a powerful combination, attracting both funding and dedicated volunteers. Their professional partnership deepened into a close friendship, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Lily thrived at Westbrook Academy, her natural generosity now channeled into organizing food drives and volunteer activities with her classmates. The story of her sharing bread with a disguised millionaire became local legend, though she remained refreshingly unimpressed by her own role in the narrative. One crisp autumn afternoon, 2 years after their first encounter, Sarah and Richard sat on a bench outside the original Breaking Bread kitchen, watching volunteers unload a truck of donated produce. "Did you ever imagine this is where you'd end up?" Sarah asked, "when you were sitting on that concrete pretending to be homeless?" Richard considered the question. "Not specifically this, but I was looking for meaning again, for purpose beyond profit. So in a way, I found exactly what I was seeking." He turned to Sarah. "What about you? Did you imagine this future when you were working 2 jobs and sharing day-old bread with Lily?" Sarah shook her head. "Never. I was just trying to survive each day, to teach Lily the values my mother taught me despite our circumstances." She watched as a young mother entered the kitchen, holding a child's hand. "But I always believed that kindness matters, even when it seems small or insignificant." Lily's gesture proved that. Richard nodded thoughtfully. "Your daughter changed my life with a piece of bread. It was the reminder that we all have something to give, and we all have something to learn, regardless of our bank accounts." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street that had once witnessed a disguised CEO accepting bread from a child's hands, Richard spoke softly. "When I was asked later what had marked me most about my homeless experience, I said it was witnessing someone share their food despite their own hunger. I changed yours with resources and opportunity, but the most valuable exchange wasn't the material one." "No," Sarah agreed. "I went to test humanity, but I was the one being tested." Sarah smiled, recognizing the echo of words from that first encounter. "And now?" Richard looked around at the thriving community space they had built together, at the lives being transformed through dignity rather than charity, at the circles of connection expanding outward like ripples from a single drop in still water. "Now I understand that the test never ends. Every day we choose what kind of people we want to be, what kind of world we want to create." He stood, offering his hand to Sarah. "Shall we get back to work? There's still so much bread to break together." Sarah took his hand and rose. "Always," she said simply, as they walked side by side toward the warm light of the kitchen and the community gathered within.